Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Psychology of a Femcell series. So, I got a question from one of the pretty girls in the Patreon, and I decided to go ahead and answer it. And I want to put it on the main YouTube channel because this is something that is not talked about enough in the Black community. But this pretty girl says, "Hey, Exoticals United. I was wondering if you could do a topic on your haters being your own family members. For example, your mom. I just got kicked out of my mom's house the day after Father's Day, right before I had work at my 9 a.m. internship. Shout out to accounting majors, because my mom hates that my life at 22 was not her experience. She was married with 2 kids and a shitty husband. Love my dad though, rest in peace. For context, I'm a rising senior in college. I make good money even as an intern, and I don't have kids. I have been on study abroad multiple times. She doesn't have a passport, and I get paid to go to college instead of the other way around due to having such a high GPA and being active on campus, and I have never had debt. She hates that my boyfriend treats me so well. She actually told me when she was kicking me out, call your boyfriend since he is so amazing. Many people have told me and her, oh, I'd love a daughter like yours. And it just seems like whatever I do, it's not enough. She hates that I live my life and want more for myself. She has been acting a fool since I got my internship, hating on me so bad, although this is just years of buildup. We've had other problems before. Now I just moved in with my boyfriend yesterday, and I feel so hurt and embarrassed. Since she is Hispanic, she told me to stay until I got married instead of living on my own, to which she completely redacted. She claims and takes credit, saying I went to school on her dime. Definitely not true, because her and my dad said they would not pay for school and I would have to figure it out, which I did, of course, because I'm resourceful. She never helped me. My mom never went to school, traveled, and etc. I'm just feeling so horrible, low key, and I'm typing this from work, just going through it. My friends have been sympathetic and asked if I need help, but I knew this day was coming and I have a lot of cash saved up, so now my boyfriend and I are getting an apartment that he is paying for, and I have to buy a car because she took the one I used to drive too. Sorry for the long rant. So I saw this comment and I just wanted to talk about this because I feel like in the multiracial community, some people, they may come from poor backgrounds, or like maybe they come from an upwardly mobile family. So let's say your mother and father grew up poor and then maybe they worked so that you didn't have to grow up the same way. But then those same parents end up resenting you if they feel like you're doing better than them. So I just want to talk about that phenomenon because I feel like as exoticals, we don't really have a safe space to talk about that on YouTube. Unambiguous women, they don't really want solidarity with us. A lot of them perceive us as being more privileged than them. And I'm not going to deny that, but I feel like there's this very common theme where a lot of exoticals who are millennials and Gen Z, a lot of exoticals outgrow their own parents. So, regardless of whether you have a black mother or a white mother, I just feel like some parents, they love their children, but they view their child as an extension of themselves. And so I feel like this happens all the time. You have people who rush to create us. They love creating these gorgeous exotical babies. They love creating these beautiful, smart, pretty women. And then, as soon as that girl is no longer a baby, as soon as she has some independence, as soon as she decides to go off to college and kind of be like this classy, bougie type of exotical, then suddenly I've noticed some parents, they start to have a problem with that. And I don't think they're always consciously doing it. I think sometimes when they do stuff like, oh, they're kicking you out right after Father's Day, or they're kicking you out like as soon as you're about to go to your job, she's doing that because you going to your job, that triggers her. It reminds her of what she doesn't have. She never had the opportunity to have an awesome internship. Maybe she didn't go to college, or, she wasn't smart enough to get a scholarship to college and you were. So I think sometimes parents, they end up having these children, and that children is a reflection of everything they're not. I think sometimes people birth exotical children because they expect us to really love them unconditionally. That's part of why I'm child free, by the way. It's because at the end of the day, I can't control how my child will turn out. So I think sometimes mothers, they birth us exoticals and they think of us like pets. like we're a cute little puppy dog or whatever. But as soon as we start barking back, or as soon as we start setting boundaries, sometimes parents get upset. Like, what the heck? You're supposed to make me look good. You're supposed to be worshiping me. Some women have children because they want to be worshiped by those children. Like, I've literally heard some people, they will specifically have exotical children because they want to know what it feels like to be put on a pedestal by someone of your phenotype or someone who looks like you. And they don't admit this a lot of times, but that's really what it is. Also, if you come from a black father, let's say that black man left your mother. I mean, I don't know what it is with this pretty girl, but sometimes exoticals who have black fathers, maybe the mother, she was rejected by the father, or he was like, he abandoned her or whatever. And so the mothers, they're like these regretful parents. So they become these single mothers, and then they have to try to go back out into the dating market and be hypergamous as a single mother. And then sometimes you'll even have where the mothers are threatened by their daughters. And then they'll be like, oh, don't walk around with certain things on, or like, you can't wear makeup, you can't do your hair because you're going to steal my man. Like, I've heard of some crazy scenarios like this. But this pretty girl said, could you do a topic on your haters being your family members, for example, your mom? Sometimes moms get mad when they feel like you've outgrown them. And I think some mothers, they want to ride their daughter's coattails. And so if you're just still in college and, maybe you're just building yourself up, I feel like some mothers don't want to feel left behind. I think that a lot of times parents won't admit that they can't teach you everything. And so it's almost this mindset where when you're no longer depending on that parent, then that parent resents you, because a lot of people have children because they want to feel needed. Because we all know that children need their parents in order to survive. So some women have kids because they want to feel needed. And so as soon as you become older and independent and, you've got some stuff going for yourself, that same mother that wanted to feel needed by you, she starts feeling this sense of rejection, or kind of this sense of being ostracized, or feeling like she doesn't fit in with her own daughter. I've literally heard of mothers talking about that, feeling like they don't fit in with their daughters. Do you know how emotionally codependent that is? There are a lot of mothers who have daughters because they just want to be validated by their own daughter. That's all they wanted. That's the only reason that they birthed you, is so you could validate them. They want you to validate them. Or have you ever been around those mothers where they treat their little children like slaves? It literally comes off as if they birthed those children to be slaves for them. They birthed those children so that they could one day take care of them. Or like when the kids were little, they were working those kids to the bone and not paying them. Or, maybe they were using those kids to help with the family business. So they wanted those children as free labor. So I think that could also be an underlying reason why this Exotical's mom is mad, because with this pretty girl, she's using her labor to build herself. She's going to college. She's doing the internship. She's pocketing the money. She's taking the paycheck from that. Now, I will say, though, if you're living at your parents' house as a young adult and not paying any rent, that does make a little bit more sense for them wanting you to be kicked out. Also, I really don't recommend moving in with your boyfriend. I would never tell the Exoticals to do something like that. So I do want to make that clear. I never promote being codependent on a man. A man is not a plan. So for this pretty girl, she said that she has her own savings or whatever. I would just get your own little small studio, or if you could live on campus, I would get something like that. I do not recommend moving in with your boyfriend, because statistically, most long-term relationships only last about 2 years or 2.5 years. So if you're only 18, 19, 20 years old, chances are you're probably not going to be with that guy as the time goes on. And also, if you're the only one with the savings and then you're getting an apartment for the two of you, she says that the boyfriend is going to pay for the apartment. But again, I don't recommend that Exoticals depend on men to provide them with a basic sense of living. I think that maybe if you were living in the apartment by yourself and maybe he's still offering to pay your bills or something, I think that's different. But I hope that you're putting your name on the lease, because otherwise, a couple years down the road, if you want to break up with that guy, let's say there's a better guy out there for you. If you break up with this guy, now he can do the same thing to you that your mom did. So also, I think part of why some mothers abruptly kick their children out on the street is because they just get fed up. They want their child to suffer. That's literally what that is. They want their child to feel the same trauma and the same panic that they felt as a parent. I also think that some parents are mentally ill. Some parents literally get emotionally triggered just seeing you walk around in their house. They literally get triggered by your presence, or they feel like they already failed as a parent. And so it's this mindset of, if you're not going to make me feel good, get out of my house. If you're not going to validate me, get out of my house. If you're not going to give me money or groceries, etc., get out of my house. Now, would I do that to my child? Probably not, because I just feel like the world is so much more dangerous outside of my house versus inside of my house. But then again, I don't have kids, so I guess I don't know. But I think that's another part of it as well. They want you to feel the same hurt that they feel. They want you to feel alone. So your mother's projecting by kicking you out right before you go off to work. She wants you to feel that same stress and turmoil that she's feeling. So it's really more of a reflection on her than it is on you. But this pretty girl says, I just got kicked out of my mom's house the day after Father's Day, right before I had work at my 9 a.m. internship. Shout out to accounting majors, because she hates that my life at 22 was not her experience. She was married with 2 kids and a shitty husband. So I do think lifestyle jealousy is a very common dynamic, actually, with mothers and daughters or fathers and sons. A lot of women don't think this through. So they'll have these children, and then it's like they want their children to be a symbol of success, because that's what we are as exoticals. A lot of people, they either want to date us or create us. So then they parade us around like, oh, look how pretty my daughter is. Oh, well, look at my, even this pretty girl. She said people were telling her mother, oh, you're so blessed to have this type of daughter. So a lot of moms, they start off parading their children around, and they put their children on a pedestal, and then they get mad when that child grows up and puts herself on a pedestal. And it's like, okay, how are you going to create a monster and get mad at the monster you created? Also, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to feel down on myself? Am I supposed to have low self-esteem? So I think sometimes mothers can get triggered too when their own children have higher self-esteem than them, because it makes them feel like, okay, I'm in my 50s and 60s. I didn't have the confidence to live like this when I was 22. So let me humble her. A lot of times parents will do stuff like this as a humbling tactic, putting you out on the street, cutting you off, locking you out of the house, taking away your car keys, mutilating your car, destroying your property. They're doing stuff like that as a humbling tactic. They're trying to use abuse as a way to scare you. And I think that, especially when you become a young adult, a lot of parents, they can't really whoop you anymore. You know what I mean? They can't use whoopings or throwing a flip-flop at you. They can't really threaten you in that way. And so the way that they try to have leverage over you is by using a living space. So that's why, to this exotical, if you're listening, I really hope that you get your own apartment, not with your boyfriend. Because if it's your own apartment, nobody can kick you out of that shit. Nobody can take your keys. Nobody can say, oh, you have nowhere to go after you come home from work. You're homeless now. You're homeless as of 8:55 a.m. You have nowhere to return to. But this pretty girl says, I make good money as an intern. I don't have kids. I have been on study abroad multiple times. My mom doesn't have a passport, and I get paid to go to college instead of the other way around due to having a high GPA and being active on campus, and I have never had debt. Okay, so that's your leverage right there. So you don't have any debt. You don't have any kids. And I think part of why your mom is trying to make you live with your boyfriend, she wants you to be codependent on men like how she was. Your mother was codependent and sounds like she was male-centered and a pick-me. And so she's subconsciously pushing you down that same generational curse that she comes from. And so that's why I'm saying, please do not move in with your boyfriend. 5 years from now, it's not going to go well. I know that you probably don't like to hear that. I think as exoticals, we always have a guy that's swooping in to save us. I can relate to that. I've had that happen myself. But even when I had a boyfriend, like after I got divorced and everything, I didn't move in with him. So even though he wanted me to move in with him, he had a nice big house or whatever, I still didn't move in with him because I knew better. And I didn't want any man to have leverage to be able to kick me out. Also, him being able to cheat or, I don't know, do something crazy. So it's like, if your own mother turned out to be abusive and she's supposed to be the one safe space, why are you suddenly thinking that your boyfriend would not be the same way? And I'm not trying to talk shit, but it's like, generally speaking, women who come from environments like this, kind of codependent environments, generally speaking, they do have a higher abuse tolerance and they do have a higher tendency to get into romantic relationships with men who have the same behaviors. So even if your boyfriend is not acting that way now, there's no guarantee that your boyfriend is going to consistently be the same way in the future. And also, it sounded like the boyfriend lived with his parents, so I'm assuming that the boyfriend is young as well, probably 22, 23. Men who are that young, generally speaking, they're not going to be providers, and definitely not long term. So if you make good money, like how you said you did in the comment, that means that you should be able to get your own apartment. It doesn't mean your boyfriend can't come over. If he wants to come over and you guys have a little sleepover and have fun, whatever, that's fine. But as far as living with him, I would never tell any of the Exoticals to do that. But this pretty girl says, I don't have kids. I have been on study abroad and I get paid to go to college instead of the other way around. My mother hates that my boyfriend treats me so well. She actually told me when she was kicking me out, call your boyfriend since he's so amazing. So your mom feels replaced. Sounds like your mom feels replaced because you have another quote unquote provider. She feels replaced because you have another emotional safe space besides her. And she feels like she's no longer relevant in your life. She feels like she no longer has the same influence over you that she did before. And so she's jealous. She sounds like she's jealous because you have somebody that cares about you. And a lot of people, a lot of parents, they'll try to use their status as leverage. They'll be like, oh, I was the only one that cared for you, or I was there when nobody else was there. So your mother, because she can't use that argument, now she's saying, oh, call your boyfriend. So she's kind of implying, you won't be able to depend on me anymore. You won't be able to call me anymore. I won't be your emotional support anymore. So find somebody else. She's saying that because she wants to hurt you. It sounds like she is hurting herself. Sounds like she feels very alone in life. And so maybe she wants you to feel that same loneliness that she feels. But this pretty girl says, she hates that my boyfriend treats me so well. She actually told me, call your boyfriend since he's so amazing. Many people have told me and my mom, oh, I would love a daughter like yours. And it just seems like whatever I do is never enough. So that's very common in parents who struggle with narcissism. Also, emotionally unavailable parents where they were neglected by their mothers and fathers. So it sounds like maybe your mother comes from a background where her parents didn't encourage her. But guess what? That's not your problem. That's not your fault and that's not your problem. You didn't ask to be born. She's the one who decided to have a child. So you as an adult, you get to decide now, do you want her in your life still? So I think that's something a lot of parents don't prepare for. Yeah, mom and dad get to be the boss when you're a child, but guess what? As soon as you become an adult, now you're the boss. Now you get to go back and analyze your parents and how they parented you. Now you get to decide if you want to stay in contact with them. Do you consider them to be abusive? Do you consider them to be narcissists? So it sounds like your mom is kind of coming to that realization, and it's okay to admit that you want your parents' validation. I really think that every young adult deserves to have good parents who validate them. So if your mother is no longer meeting your emotional needs, guess what? You don't have to meet hers anymore because you're an adult now. And especially if she's going to kick you out or whatever, that's fine. She can kick you out. You can get your own apartment since you said you make good money, and then you can go no contact. And then your mother better not contact. I would be like, you better not contact me when you're older. I probably wouldn't say that, but it's like, if somebody was treating me badly or trying to put me on the street or whatever because they're mad because I got a job, yeah, they would definitely be no contact. But I just want to make sure that your mom's not pushing you into codependency, because that usually happens. Generally speaking, emotional orphans tend to be codependent. So, you said that you lost your father and sounds like you lost your mother emotionally. So, if you don't have anybody else other than your boyfriend, that does make you codependent. So, that's why if I were you, I would be independent and stop depending on others for a living space. You're old enough to have your own place. When I was 18, 19 years old, I was living out on my own. Yes, I had to have roommates sometimes. Yes, I had to live in a dorm and all that, but I still tried to build a sense of independence. Living on your own is not that scary. What's more scary is depending on other people for you to have a place to live. That's what's more scary. So I'd rather live with 10 roommates than live with a boyfriend or live with a family member who kicks me out every day. But this pretty girl says she hates that I live my life and want more for myself. She's been acting a fool since I got my internship, hating on me so bad, although this is just years of buildup. Okay, sounds like you're probably a very young exotical. You want to be an adult? Prove it. Because that's the only way your parents are finally going to put some respect on your name. Like even in my case, I have a good relationship with my parents, but I had to move out. I can't just talk this big shit or, say that I'm independent or I've got so much going for myself. Okay, so then that means I can live on my own then. Living on my own is very simple. You just apply for an apartment, you pay the down payment or whatever, and then you just move in. So I feel like there's no way that you'll be able to really get the message across except for with action. So the way to take action is to go no contact or block or do whatever you need to do if you choose not to contact her anymore, and then get your own apartment. If your boyfriend truly loves you, he will support you whether you live with him or not. I got my first apartment when I had a boyfriend. My boyfriend at the time, he was not like, oh, we have to move in together, so if he really is into you, he doesn't feel like he has to live with you. So let your boyfriend continue living with his parents. Let your mom live by herself, and then you get your own little studio or, go live wherever you need to live. Even if it's not the nicest apartment, even if it's like kind of an older apartment or you live off campus or something, you can go do that. But this pretty girl said, we have had other problems before. Now I just moved in with my boyfriend yesterday and I feel so hurt and embarrassed. So you feel embarrassed about what? Embarrassed in front of who? Because you shouldn't feel embarrassed in front of your boyfriend. If he truly loves you and it's a healthy relationship, you shouldn't have any embarrassment, because it's like when I think of feeling embarrassed, it means that I'm trying to impress somebody. So who are you trying to impress? Your boyfriend, your boyfriend's family, what? If you're feeling a lot of embarrassment, generally speaking, that means you're in a toxic environment. Like that's what I learned. If I'm constantly trying to prevent embarrassing myself, I'm around somebody that's toxic and judgmental. So it's easier for me to just cut that person off. And then guess what? There's nobody around for me to feel embarrassed by. And being a senior in college is more than old enough to live on your own. When I was in college, I lived on my own from freshman year all the way to senior year. And when I say on my own, I don't necessarily mean by myself, but I did live on my own. I wasn't depending on my parents and then getting mad at my parents. You can't live with someone, then get mad that they try to boss you around. Well, yeah, it's their house, so they're paying the bills and stuff. So they're naturally going to feel like that house is leverage over you. So being a senior in college, you should have really been living on your own since freshman year. And especially if you got a scholarship as well, you don't even have to pay for college, and then you have a job where you make good money. Well, yeah, you should have been living on your own like years ago. And sometimes mothers, they want their kids to live there so that they have somebody to fix. Have you ever been around that? Like those types of parents where they want to live with their kids, but then they complain about their kids. They want to live with you, but then they complain about you 24/7. They say they love you, but then they're constantly complaining about your personality and basically they don't like you. So sometimes parents, they'll try to beg you back. So once you say I'm moving out or whatever, they'll suddenly try to change up their tune for a couple days or whatever, and then you'll be thinking, "Oh, this is good enough." But my question for this exotical is, why did you never move out in the first place? Why were you still living there? Like if your mom was really that bad, why did you even stay there? Cuz like I said, it does sound like emotional codependency. It sounds like emotional codependency. If your boyfriend is so great, why didn't you move in with him or get married? Really? I mean, by the way, I'm never going to tell you to marry anybody on this channel. Like I said, I think you really should just live on your own. And once you reach that age, like 18, 19, 20, that's when it's time to be an adult. And that's why I say that this channel is really not for women who are 21 years old and younger. This channel is really for women who are done with college. It's really for women who they have more life experience. And so, that's why sometimes when I answer these questions from you guys, and you guys are like a lot younger, sometimes I probably sound very aggressive or like I'm being harsh or something, but it's like, no, I'm speaking as somebody who has a little bit more life experience and a little bit more independence. So you can't complain about not being independent when you didn't take the steps to be independent. So just like how you lived abroad by yourself for 6 months or for an entire semester, you lived in a whole other country, well, that's much harder than getting your own apartment. So you can't skip the steps to adulthood and then expect to be treated as an adult. But if your mom is abusive, she should be cut off. You should go no contact with her because she might really be jealous of your lifestyle. And so guess what? If you're jealous of my lifestyle, you don't get to participate in it then. Don't ask me for anything then. But this pretty girl says, since my mom is Hispanic, she told me to stay home till I got married instead of living on my own, which she completely redacted. Yeah, that is a cultural and generational curse. Forcing people to stay living at home until they get married sounds mentally ill. That's an extremely dusty, extreme pick-me talking point. Oh, well, you're a woman, so you can't live on your own unless you live with a man. Are you kidding me right now? I would have gone no contact right there. With that one sentence, I would have never spoken to that woman again. Anybody who thinks that a woman can't live on her own unless she's married to a man, she needs to be immediately removed from my life. That is a pick me level. That is a God level pick me. Oh, well, you can't even live in your own apartment. You need to live at home with mommy and daddy until a man picks you for marriage. That's ridiculous. It's not the fucking slave days. It's not the 1800s. Women have access to their own bank accounts now. We have access to credit. So there's no reason for us to be forced to live under the care. What she's basically saying is, because you're a woman, you can't be trusted to live on your own. You can't be trusted to be independent. Women can't be independent. So my question is, why would I even live with a woman who has that much of a pick-me mindset? I don't want to be around a pick-me. Pick-me's are extremely dangerous, even if they're your own family members. So that's an extreme pick-me mindset. But this pretty girl says, she claims and takes credit saying I went to school on her dime. Not true, because her and my dad said they would not pay for school and that I would have to figure it out, which I did, because I'm resourceful. She never helped me. My mom never went to school, traveled, etc. I'm just feeling so horrible low-key, and I'm typing this from work, just going through it. My friends have been sympathetic and asked if I need help, but I knew this day was coming and have a lot of cash saved up. So now my boyfriend and I are getting an apartment that he is paying for, and I have to buy a car because she took the one that I used to drive too. Okay, so she said that you can't live on your own unless you're with a man, and then she took your car. And you're still in contact with this woman? That's not a mother. And I'm not trying to talk shit about people's moms, but think about what a good mother means to you, because you're an adult now, so you get to decide what a good mother is. She no longer gets to be the boss and decide what's a good mother and what's not. Now you're the adult, so you get to choose. Is she a good mother or is she not? Is she the type of woman that I would be taking care of when I'm older or not? Is she the type of woman that I want to remain in my life or no? And I also have a question about the boyfriend as well. Is the boyfriend, does he have a car or not? So again, it sounds like you're kind of trading one problem for another. If I'm going to trade and pick a struggle, I'm not going to choose between a struggling mother and a struggling boyfriend. I would just rather struggle by myself. I'd rather just be single and figure out the car situation instead of, oh, I have to save up money. Oh, I said my boyfriend's paying, but I still have to use my savings as well. It sounds like you're about to get into a 50-50 dynamic with the boyfriend. So if you don't get anything from this video, please do not move in with a boyfriend. Do not move in with anybody else, because clearly people have a pattern of trying to use your living situation against you. And this is very common with young adults in general. I made a video about this, kind of this topic. I talked about it a couple years ago, but it sounds like the boyfriend also doesn't have a car, so that's my thing too, is if the boyfriend, if he lives with his parents or whatever, and then he's gonna live with you, and then he has no car, sounds like you're really providing for the boyfriend. You're providing the apartment. You're going to be providing a car. He's probably going to ask to drive your car, or you're going to be driving him around. When I was in my early 20s, when I moved out of my parents' house, part of why I moved out of my parents' house was because I did have a boyfriend at the time as well. And I didn't like, bringing a boy into my dad's house and stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like I have to ask my parents, hey, can so and so come over? And like, it's like having to hide off in the living room and stuff. And then we have to be quiet and we can't play loud music and stuff because I'm in my parents' house. Instead of me doing that, I got my own apartment. My ex lived with his parents at the time because he was also in his early 20s. We were very young when we met as well, 21 and 23. This was back in my pick me phase, but I was never so much of a pick me that I've lived with a man that I wasn't married to. I've never done that. And I would never tell the Exoticals to do that. So, you know what I did? In my early 20s, I got my own little apartment. It was about $995. It was an older apartment. My little boyfriend at the time, he continued living with his parents. And then when I didn't have a car, my little boyfriend at the time, he had a car. So he would drive me to work or whatever until I got a car. So that's what I did in my early 20s. But what do you ladies think? Have any of you guys been in this situation? Let me know in the comments and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.